Okay. So thank you. So as Pasan indicated, both of us will be doing the session. We have divided the session into two parts. One is about writing the proposal, and then the other aspect is sort of do's and don'ts, advice about the process of applying for your PhD program. Right. So let me start. All right. I will be talking about writing a research proposal for PhD application. Feel free to ask questions while the session is on. I should be able to see if you raise your hand or unmute and talk. That's no problem. Right. In terms of writing a proposal for a PhD program, now, first of all of you know, some of you have done your master's as well. A research proposal, as you know, is a document that describes what you want to do in research, why you want to do that, how you want to do it, and where you plan to do the research. So it can be a very brief proposal. It can be a detailed proposal. Now, if it's a detailed proposal, you will have sections like all these that I've shown, from title page to TOC, introduction, a thorough literature review, and so on. This detailed proposal is what you prepare like when you submit for your master's, where before you proceed to actually doing your field work, what you prepare, and also once you get into your PhD program, after a year, usually it's a year like in Australia, New Zealand, that you need to submit such a lengthy, detailed proposal. Whereas when it comes to preparing a proposal, when you are applying for a PhD, it does not need to be such detailed proposal. So we go back to this part. So the detailed one is where you submit it as a requirement for the faculty to approve you proceeding with your data collection. But when you are applying for your PhD, it would be the brief proposal. So I checked because the latest people who are going for their PhD are Samanthi and Samita. So I checked with Samita because when I applied for my PhD, it was 20 years ago, but looks like things haven't still changed. They are still expecting a very brief proposal, ranging from 2 pages to 3 pages to maybe 5-6 pages max, right? So when it comes to the brief proposal, since it's going to be only about 2 to 4, 5 pages, you won't need a table of content, right? So basically what you would need to write is an introduction where you set out the background of the problem area that you plan to research. If you have identified, it will be good if you have identified gaps in the literature, and then based on that, some research problem statement. Then based on those, you come up with the purpose of the study, why you want to study, setting those out. And then if you can have research questions or objectives or both, and the scope, right? So this part itself, now if it's going to be 2 to 5 pages, this part itself will be about 1 page, 1.5 page, right? So you would have to have, so that, I mean, the reason when you are applying for your PhD, the supervisors and the universities expect you to submit a proposal is to show that you have started thinking about the research area, to show that you have read seminal work and latest research papers in this area, and also to show that you have started thinking about your methodology, right? Everybody knows, including yourself, your real research might differ quite extensively from what you write in your proposal, right? But for them to see the area, because that's how they try to match your proposal with a supervisor. So they want to see the area, the research problem, whether it's something of interest for them to take you on as a as a PhD student under them, and also to see whether the methodology fits with their research methodology, right? So mainly it's for those purposes, and also to show that you are serious, that you have started reading, you know the area, and also importantly to see whether you are capable of writing. So in order to double check your writing ability, whether, you know, in case somebody else, or now with AI, anybody could write the proposal, they sometimes want to speak to you. So they might have an online interview with you. Prospective supervisors will call you to see how you are speaking, your language speaking ability, because that will tell the way you speak whether it is you who actually wrote that, right? And then whether you know the content and so on. So be ready for that as well. So what you write, you should know, because if they have an interview, you should be able to explain that well, right? So have a strong introduction, right? Because, you know, in interviews, they say the interviewer forms the impression of you in the first couple of seconds, right? They form an impression about you. So your introduction has to be very strong, not with typos and grammatical error and all that, because that then gives a bad impression about you, right? So you need to, so the impression about you is given through the document you submit. So give a good impression. So have, you know, start the first sentence itself, you know, with a very catchy or, you know, interesting way of saying things, right? So have a good introduction, which covers these aspects. Then move on to the literature. Of course, you won't have a thorough literature review. You don't have to present a thorough literature review because it will take so many pages, but show that you have read from the seminal classical work to something recent, right? So highlight the main things that you have read, summarize, synthesize them very briefly into a paragraph, maybe about 2 paragraphs, and highlight the gaps that you have identified in terms of the knowledge in that area. Plus, if you have seen gaps in methodology, highlight all those, because then that shows you have that critical thinking as well, for you to not just read and reproduce what you have read, but, you know, critically think what you have read and how you summarize, whether you are able to synthesize and summarize, right? So have a paragraph or 2 maybe in a literature review. Of course, if you are submitting a proposal which is 5 to 6 pages, you might be able to have even a page and a half of literature review, right? Then very briefly talk about your methodology. Again, your methodology might change. You might want to do interpretivism, but then end up doing mixed methodology, or you might opt for positivism and end up mixed methodology, or, you know, even change entirely to qualitative. So things might change as once you go there and work with your supervisor, new ideas, their influence and all that, things might change. But at the time of applying, what do you plan to do? How do you plan to do, right? So basically state your philosophy, whether it's going to be positivism, post-positivism, interpretivism, all that, rationale in terms of who you are, in terms of a researcher, what you believe. And very briefly about the design, you know, are you planning to do a cross-cultural study in 2 countries or only in Sri Lanka? Recently, somebody told me the supervisor was like advising against primary data collection because of ethics clearance will take time and complex. So they were encouraging secondary data collection, right? So mention whether you want to do primary data collection or secondary data collection. If it's secondary in your area, are there, is Central Bank or Colombo Stock Exchange, do they have the required databases, or Department of Census and Statistics, do they have the data? So you need to show that you know, don't just say secondary, right? In terms of secondary, what exact database and who has it? So mention all those, because that also shows that you have looked into this research. You are not just dropping terminology, and that you're serious about it because you have invested time to look into all those, whether it's available, how much it is, whatever. So look into those and state those as well, right? So once again, we know it will change, but at the time of, because if you, because sometimes what happens is, if the area is of interest to the supervisor, but their methodology is different to what you propose, then the supervisor will look for a co-supervisor who is strong in the methodology, right? So it helps with their sort of logistics admission process for you to say what your methodology is, right? So that's why we need all these information when you are applying. Now, briefly say about the proper data analysis, but even if you don't, that's fine, because if it is quantitative, you're going to use SEM or whatever accordingly. If it is qualitative, it will be discourse analysis, thematic, and all that. So that can be just very brief, not too much detail. Now, going back to my conversation with Samita, as I said, he had prepared 5 to 6 pages. Apparently, one supervisor had said, oh, this was too detailed, that they were expecting only about 2 pages or 2-page proposal, right? But the other places he had applied, they were fine with the 5 to 6 pages. So maybe, no harm in preparing for a 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 page proposal, because that would cover, because if you prepare something shorter and the university is expecting something like 5 pages, then, you all have 2 versions. But if they don't specifically say roughly the word count or whatever, then it's always better to send sort of a slightly detailed one, like a 5-page proposal to all the places that you are applying than a 2-page one. When I applied, I had only I think a 2-page proposal. So, some universities still expect 2 pages, but some are 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 pages. Right. So that's all. Okay. So have some references and follow whatever style. I mean, in Sri Lanka, in our faculty, we follow APA. It doesn't matter, but whatever style you are following, whether it's Chicago, Harvard, APA, follow it consistently. Right. That's the main thing. Correctly and consistently, whatever the style you are following. All right. So that's all I have in terms of writing a proposal. Since it's going to be a brief proposal, my advice is also very brief, because you don't need to go into detail, all that. So is there anything you all want to ask, share, or Tharusha, would you like to add anything?
No, Miss, you covered everything. Maybe you can take any questions, no, if they have, before we move to the next part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions?
Good morning, Madam. Udeshika
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
Madam, this is regarding now when it comes to the research that we all are doing. So what we are, when it comes to the gap, Madam, we are finding probably empirical gap now. Now, the research that we all are doing, but when it comes to PhD, is it necessary to go with the theoretical contribution? And could you please explain on that?
Personally, I mean, like for my research, I had empirical gap, methodological gap, and in some ways sort of like a theoretical, because There were certain contradictions in terms of findings, so the current theory wasn't able to explain. So you can have it, it's not a must, because theoretical gap means you are not poking any shortcomings in a particular theory, right? It's not that meaning. Theoretical gap doesn't mean, you know, SET theory is not good because, you know, but what we mean by, at least for me, what I mean by theoretical gap is like certain relationships. Sorry, I'm positivistic, so I will talk it in terms of positivistic way. Tharusha might be able to explain in a different way. So let's say there are certain relationships that you find, but are unable to explain, or the current theories that have been used are unable to explain why and how certain things are happening. You might need to then look, so that's like a theoretical gap. It's unable, so you would need to look for something, a different theory to explain and bring in new variables to explain those sometimes boundary conditions. So that's what I mean by theoretical gap. Tharusha, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Miss. So I think, thank you. Adding to the query Udeshika had, maybe kind of a knowledge gap. No, you need to look at what they exist, especially in a PhD and at a doctoral level. You need to see what the literature so far says, what we know about it, what else is important, yet we don't know enough. So in that way, we need to also, because we need to start with the literature, see what the literature is saying, and identify something which is worthy of studying based on certain key areas that have not been adequately covered. So I think we need to think of that angle as well. Is that
Does that
okay?
help, Udeshika?
Yeah, thank you so much, madam. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Miss, it's Krishmal here. Good morning.
Yes. Morning.
Miss, so I know it doesn't work according to our timelines always, but how long in advance should we start applying?
Okay, so now let's say if you are applying for Australia, New Zealand, their academic year starts in February. So semester 1 starts in February. Some universities have a rolling intake. Some want you to come in semester 1 because they have coursework requirements, research methodology coursework requirements. But sometimes they will, now for me, I couldn't go in February because the visa got delayed. So I joined in July, the second semester. So the coursework was a bit of a messy for me. So nowadays, sometimes they don't want you to come, so then you would have to defer it to next year. So I would say apply at least a year before, because they have different deadlines for admission and then another deadline for scholarships. So sometimes you just put a tick, then they will consider you for both. Some universities will only after you get the admission, then you have to sort of ask and apply for your financial aid. So that will then have a deadline. And then now visa also takes sometimes a couple of months here. Now I think it's a bit better. Last year, Australia was taking a long time for visa. So I would say at least a year before start looking around. Minimum 1 year, even if it's before, no problem.
Thank you very much, Miss.
And these are, Krishmal, I'm meaning foreign admissions, because Tharusha will be covering in terms of where you want to go. If it is local, then it's different, much faster, I think. Overseas applications process is much longer because they get hundreds of applications and they have deadlines. So many people scrutinize it. That's why it's longer.
Okay, Miss.
I mean, another advice I would say is once you write your proposal, whether it's 2 pages, 5 pages, maybe show it to, if you have a mentor or somebody who has applied, gone and come back, or who is still there, show your colleagues, ask them to read it and see, because whether it's proposal or anything that we write, we usually don't see the mistakes, we don't see the gaps and flaws because things are in our mind. We think we have written and explained properly, but the reader might not see it in that way. So, just show it to somebody, your former master's research supervisor, anybody, just show them and see whether this makes sense. Have I explained properly? Do you think this is a good area? Like that, just show it before you send it out. If there is no questions, Tharusha, shall I pass it on to you, and then if there are more questions, we can address it later?
Yes,
All right.
at the end also we can take any questions. Yes, that's fine. So as Pavithra Miss also explained, we have divided this session into two parts. As Miss covered the components of the proposal, etc. I will be talking more of these practical issues in terms of embarking on the journey, how you apply, etc. So while there is no one correct answer, we hope the particular points that we are sharing would help you to think about it, look at the options available, and make some forward decisions. So I'll be talking about embarking on the PhD journey, and I'll be particularly looking at what you should consider before making the decision to embark on a PhD, which program option to select, what to consider in applying for a PhD program, whom to approach in applying, which country or countries to select, how to finance a PhD, which universities or programs to apply as, and with some points for you to, as some points to ponder as some takeaway points. So while there is no one correct answer, we will try to shed some light on these aspects so that you know the options available and make a more informed decision in the future about these particular areas. So first, as academics, we all know that doing a PhD is an important thing for our career. So you all are aware of the importance, and you are, of course, keen to take on that journey, which is a very important journey. Looking back, we feel what we are is basically due to the training of the PhD. So it's very important that you do that. However, we have to also look at how it's going to affect us professionally and personally. So look at the pros and cons. Professionally, you will know, yes, I need to do it for my career advancements. It helps in my teaching and in my maybe research work, career progression, all that, of course. So there's no doubt about it. But also look at personally. You need to think how it's going to affect your personal life in terms of the other non-work life you need to manage. So all that has to be really thought about. Linked to that point is what I usually believe in. It's your journey. So don't think it's a race just because someone else has enrolled for it or someone else is doing that. That doesn't mean to say, yes, I also have to quickly do, because something I believe and it has given me a lot of peace of mind. You have to look at what your priority is, what you need to do, and then decide the time, where, what you do. And that would really help you in your journey, and maybe we put very much less pressure on you. So think about whether it's the right time and whether you have the right context and the support. So are you really ready, for instance, in terms of personally and professionally? Is this the right time? Do I have the support system? Okay, sometimes we need to leave our parents here. Is there enough care for them? And then if we go with our family, how is it going to, are we going to manage our family there? So you have to really think of all those angles, because we go, in our lives, there are different phases. So we have to think in terms of the particular phase that you're in. Is this really the right time for you to do a PhD? So always think it's not because someone else is doing, I'm doing because I know it's needed for me and I'm doing at the right time. So you will be very much less stressed you will be really prepared to take that journey and enjoy the journey. It's very important that you enjoy the journey. Prepare yourself. You know, I think Pavithra Miss really talked about it. You need to take time to develop the research proposal. So while you need to take time to develop the research proposal, before you make a decision, you have to see, okay, I'm trying to go for a PhD. Do I have the necessary attributes, necessary skills? Am I really ready? One is in terms of publications. Now, some of you have already completed masters. So if you are thinking of the next phase to go for a PhD, try to convert your master's thesis to a good publication. I'm using the word good because especially in the case of foreign PhDs from high quality universities, high ranked universities, they are very concerned not only the fact that whether you have a publication or not, but also where that particular publication is in terms of the journal. So don't try to, we say don't salami slice, especially if it's masters, you can't, be breaking it and having many. Rather, just work on one good publication out of your masters. Sometimes through undergraduate also, we have seen some good publications coming through. So think about having a good publication, devote time and effort in consultation with your undergraduate or master's supervisor, work on it. Personally, this really helped me because I know when I applied for my PhD to get the scholarship, later I was told, because when scholarships are very competitive, when they rank, good publications really play a part. So even if you're, as Pavithra Miss explained, you have to start the process maybe 1 year ahead or so. But now itself, you can think about it. How are you going to equip yourself with a good publication? So think about this point now. And also, when we talk about training, preparing yourself, it's also to train yourself to be an independent and self-disciplined learner. Especially if you think about your undergraduate and master's studies, well, you would have done a research, but most of the part was coursework. So being in this position, of course, you have very good academic performance. So you really would have banked on those your strengths with academic performance in terms of exam success, etc., and done very well. But when it's a PhD, while there would be some amount of coursework, sometimes assessed or not assessed, the higher weightage is on the research. And for the research, of course, there'll be a supervisor, there can be various, there's proposal defense, then there can be some progress review presentations depending on the particular university. But no one will be coming behind you all the time to say, okay, do your work, what have you done on your research? Not exactly. Your supervisor will be there, but he or she will help you, guide you if you come to them. So you need to train yourself to be an independent and self-disciplined learner. That's really important. And again, this is already known to you because you all are academics and you have gone through the mill in terms of undergraduate, sometimes masters, and also you're involved in supervising other students at undergraduate or master's level. So doing a research is not easy. It's challenging. Lot of effort is needed, but you need to enjoy the journey. So if you enjoy something, then you don't really feel that it's difficult. So you have to really select something that you're really interested, passionate about, and you need to enjoy the journey. So if you need to ask any questions, you can always stop me anytime. Otherwise, I'll be going on and we can take the questions later on at the end. Whatever works for you is fine. Okay? Anything up to now you want to clarify, or can I move on? Can, no?
For me, okay,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, right. Thank you. Then in terms of the options. So when you talk about the options, there are different types. There are PhDs by publications, full-time versus part-time, local versus foreign, etc. So of course, PhD by publication, there are some universities which opt for that. Typically, it could take a longer time, and depending on the degree awarding body, they may be very specific about the quality and about the particular publications they are after. So it can be taking a long time. And from a practical point of view, it might be maybe more practical for you as academics to engage in a full-time PhD with depending on the program, it may have coursework or not, and then thereafter proceed to the research and complete the PhD thesis, and thereafter or during that time period do any publications with the supervisor. So that's the more conventional way and the more popular way where you do a full-time PhD for an academic. I'm saying for academic full-time PhD by completion of the research thesis. And since we are getting study leave also, doing a full-time will be very much beneficial, because when it's part-time, of course, your attention gets drifted and may really devoting quality time and effort becomes a problem. So if you can, that's what a lot of us from Pavithra Miss to many of us did, full-time PhD. And then you're really focused on it and you can quickly finish it and come back. That was some people, I remember those days, our relatives, they used to laugh, okay, you're on a 3-year plan kind of a thing, because we are waiting to complete this and come back. So if you are doing full time, there is more chance for you to complete quicker in 3 or 4 years time and complete it a quality PhD. If it's part time, it could. Yes,
Can I quickly jump in?
Yes, sure.
I think for leave, for our university leave and visa requirement, part-time option is not there. We have to do full-time.
Okay. Oh, right. Thank you for pointing it out, Miss. Okay. Right. So it will be full-time, no? Right. Okay. And then there's the other option, local versus foreign or split. Again, there is no one correct thing. You have to look at what really works for you. There are, as you can see, we have many PhDs who have completed quality PhDs, starting from late Professor Jayakodi, then Arosha, Sujiva, Ruangi, and there are several in the pipeline who are doing very good studies but doing local PhDs. So don't be under pressure or think I have to. Of course, foreign training is great. As a person who have undergone it, I would always say that really helped me to be who I am today, and that gave a very good foundation. But sometimes the circumstances are such that it may not be practical. So don't get too disappointed. Look at some of them who have done well and who are also progressing very well. I'm currently supervising someone who's really progressing very well doing a local PhD. So there are many. So look at your circumstances. Foreign would be great if possible, and also split again depending on the organization and also based on what our universities arrangements and particular conditions you would need to see what's possible in terms of split. What to consider is another very important thing when you are applying. First is, I think Professor Pavithra talked about topics. So when you look at in terms of topics, you have to be on the lookout for some trendy topics, something in the current debate. Because finally, through a PhD, you're trying to join that conversation. You're trying to contribute to an ongoing debate. So you need to know in your particular field, from HR to marketing to accounting to finance to general management to international business, whatever it is, you need to know in your particular field what are the trendy topics and try to see how you can contribute to that conversation and contribute to that debate. And of course, it need not only be trendy, it has to be something that really interests you. So don't just take the most trendy topic, but if you have no interest in it, it's very difficult to keep the motivation going. Remember, you need to live with your PhD work for several years, maybe 3 to 4 years. You'll be working on it. So it has to be something that you are genuinely interested in. Then you need to craft your proposal in a convincing manner, which Professor Pavithra talked about, maybe having a strong introduction, etc. So it has to, because this is something you're talking about, which you're hoping to do. While we say convincing, also you need to remember, we say don't promise mountains and deliver molehills. So don't make it too ambitious, because the reader would realize, well, this is not practical. This is not something doable, etc. So also be practical, be rational, but also do a good proposal and craft it in a very convincing manner. Then identify areas of specialization, if any, of different universities and pitch your research proposal. Sometimes you may realize the fact that you were offered a placement, and more importantly, the fact that you were offered a scholarship, was because of the particular area of your proposal. So if it is really matching to the priority areas or areas in focus of that university or the department, then they would be more receptive to your research proposal. So you need to do a lot of groundwork. Again, coming to Professor Pavithra's point, yes, start the work early, maybe 1 year early. Then you can do all your groundwork, look at the different universities, see what they are interested in. Sometimes when you look at them, you may realize, well, I'm also interested in this area. Maybe why not I do something along these lines. So take some time, look at the different universities and see how you can really match to their research interest. So when you're applying for a PhD, it's also very important that you need to identify some referees, because they would, of course, ask you to include, and referee reports will be obtained from those people. So whom you select as suitable referees also goes a long way. One thing is, the person you include as referee should have a high research repute, because their qualifications, publication records, their standing in the industry can go a long way. So that's one thing, the reputation of the referee. Then the person has to know you and your academic credentials. Otherwise, it's very difficult for that person to do justice in terms of writing a good referee report. So someone who has supervised one of the best people who could give a good referee report would be your undergraduate or master's research supervisor, or someone whom you have really directly worked under, who knows your work and the caliber of your work, so that they can actually give a very genuine opinion and also give a good write-up on the referee report. Of course, it's not only giving a good referee report, that person you should be able to rely, and you should be sure that they will also give the report by the deadline, because when it's applying for placements and scholarships, they are very particular about the deadlines, especially in the case of foreign universities. So if you don't receive everything on time, that may also become an issue, and your application may be incomplete or could get deferred. It could end up in all these different decisions. Therefore, you need to make sure. So you have to tell your referee, once you don't just put a name. That's very important. Don't just put someone's name without informing the person. You have to tell that person, can I put you as a referee, and I'm applying to these universities. So you may get an email from them. So that person is also alert, and they are alert about getting an email and responding. So it's very important that you keep the person informed and get the consent beforehand as well. Then you need to identify any required scores for English language or mathematical skills, depending on the particular country, the program, university that you are applying. Also remember, sometimes they may have special, the limits or some the bands that they have given for placements, and for scholarships they may ask for a higher score. So placement, they can give 1 score, but for a scholarship you have to get a higher score. Therefore, always be prepared. Don't just go and do these tests. try to get a score as high as possible. That would really increase your chances of getting a scholarship. Typically, getting placements is not that difficult. You also know, if you talk to friends, your colleagues, you realize a lot of people do get placements, but the more difficult part is getting a scholarship. So to get scholarships, getting the required scores and getting a score as high as possible would really make a difference. Then whom to approach? So it really depends on the particular university. So one thing you can do is, this is also something I did. I was looking at, of course, way back many years ago, but still for all, I suppose some of these things are really true. One thing is, you can look at the different universities and go to the particular department or your domain and then see who are the particular supervisors. One thing that comes to my mind is, now when you are, now by this time you have some research proposal with you, maybe a 2-page or 4-5 pages, whatever it is, you have a proposal. Now look at that. When you are writing your research proposal, you would have referred to literature, you would have referred to writings of certain people. So if you have referred to certain people, and if you can get hold of them, they would be great supervisors. This was one of my personal experiences. My PhD supervisor, I was blessed with an excellent supervisor as a person as well as in terms of expertise. And when I did the research proposal, I realized that I have been citing this person, but I couldn't quite locate where he was. By that time, he has been changing universities, etc. And later on, with the help of Professor Danture Wickramasinghe only, I was able to initially approach him, which way I'm very much grateful to Professor Danture as well. But what I'm trying to also say is, when you have referred their work, and when that particular proposal goes to those supervisors, they will be more receptive, because that's the conversation that they are engaging in. That's where their expertise lies. So they feel, yes, this is something that is in my interest, my expertise, and they'll be happy to supervise. So if you're in your research proposal, if you have kind of cited some people, it's a good idea to write to such people and see whether they are willing to supervise. Then in some other universities, there's a PhD coordinator. You need to go through that person. And some other universities, there's an admission office, and you have to write to the admission officer. And also, it may be the case that you have to apply through the online system. So this could really vary depending on the different universities. So you need to do some groundwork and identify the procedures of the various universities. Then in terms of which countries to select, again, no one answer. Oops, sorry. No one answer, and there is no one best country. Of course, you know, if you look at our faculty, there are people who have got their qualifications from various universities across the world, from different countries, including Sri Lanka. So the options are endless. Of course, there's local, there's Western, non-Western. So you need to look at all these options, see what you are more happy to go with, and also based on your circumstances, what's the best option. And once you be open to the other options as well. And once you select a particular option, you need to do more groundwork and see what are the conditions, requirements that you need to fulfill to get there. Especially in the case of non-Western countries, maybe Japan, Korea, China, etc. I personally don't have experience, but based on the discussions I have had with others, you may need to have some training on the local language. That may mean you have to spend more time as well. So I didn't have that issue because I did my PhD in Australia, so language was not an issue. So that in a way presumably would have speeded up things as well. And in a way that I feel would have helped in improving a little bit of your language skills as well, because that's what you hear all around. So think about these various options and look at the option that you wish to take on. Then when you're selecting of countries, also look at the visa requirements, ease of processing, and maybe it's not a huge issue if you're starting the process well in advance. But if you're, suddenly decide you want to quickly apply and this is the time that I'm free to go and I want to go now, these things can be delaying the process. So again, coming back to Professor Pavithra's time, start early. And anyway, consider these points. Then look at the cost of living. In different countries, the cost of living could vary. And some countries, the tuition fee could be lower, but the cost of living is higher. Or the cost of living is low and the tuition fee is higher. So it could vary. Again, you need to do a lot of groundwork and see what are the options available. No matter which option you select, wherever you decide to do, local, Western, non-Western, wherever, it is going to be a novel experience. There's going to be a lot of excitement. And you will be, of course, looking back personally, that 3+ years were actually very enjoyable, and looking back, it was a very nice period in my life. So lot of, you feel very, it was very fulfilling, while it would have been quite difficult. In my case, I had 2 small kids, so that was a difficult task. Nevertheless, it's going to be a novel experience, excitement and challenges. There'll be different challenges in different ways. For me, one way I was able to deal with the challenges, of course, it's not particularly relating to the country. Since I saw challenges, I thought I'll talk about it. I had a difficult experience, most of you all may know, with my master's. I did a MPhil, and I may be the only person who completed a PhD in a shorter period than a master's, because my MPhil took a long time. Because now it's not that, don't worry about it, because at that time it was not the same procedures, etc. So there was, and there were I was basically the only one doing that program at that time. So the procedures were not that great in terms of the streamline. So and my master's was later upgraded to MPhil. So that also took a lot of time. So all in all, it was very challenging experience in terms of the master's. But today, if you're doing a MBA, MPhil, it is not that. So don't ever worry. Your experience is not going to be that, because we have a much well streamlined program now. So all the difficulties I underwent was really helping in my PhD, and I had I can say relatively a very smooth sailing. I'm not saying it was not without problems, but relatively it was smooth sailing, and that would have helped me to complete in a relatively I could say on time, because of that, because I had so much difficult learning from my MPhil. So always use your learnings from your masters, positive, negative, and carry forward those learnings. Although it's not relevant very much to the point here, I thought, since I remembered, I'll just tell that. Then you can continue the good practices, and whatever didn't work well for you in an earlier program, you can make sure you correct it when you're doing your PhD. So it's going to take time to settle in a new environment, especially if it's a new country, of course, and of course as a PhD student, because now you've been managing your master's full-time while alongside your job, but here you will be a full-time PhD student, and you need to get used to being a student and also settle in that role, be disciplined, and make sure to work on your research from the beginning. So I did talk about few things which are really beyond what's relevant to the country. Then in terms of how to finance, as I earlier mentioned, finding a placement can be quite easier compared to getting scholarships. day by day, scholarships are getting very competitive, and also PhD programs are costly. And my personal advice, you should not really get into the problem of trying to go for a PhD program without a scholarship, because that can bring in lot of hardship, stress, because you need to find the money entirely to finance it. Then you have to manage all your other expenses, and it can be a real burden, and you will be finding it very difficult to cope up. So based on my experience, I feel it's better to prepare yourself well with publications and all other things, and uh, maybe IELTS and other whatever the requirements in the universities. Prepare yourself well, have a strong proposal, and work your way towards getting a scholarship, at least partially, so that that will really reduce the financial burden. And of course, while it is difficult to get scholarships, there are various scholarships. Some are scholarships offered by the particular university. So see the different scholarships that the particular university is offering and see whether you qualify. Be alert about the deadlines, their requirements, etc., and make sure that you apply on time. And also based on the particular countries, the governments, there can be scholarships. Recently, I saw an email about scholarships from Germany. I think Jaini had shared from international unit, they had forwarded, and then after that Jaini had shared with us. So there are such scholarships. So based on the countries, there could be various scholarships which you can apply, and also there may be institutes, particularly based on your area, there may be institutes as well, area of research. So be alert, be on the lookout, and see whether you can get at least partial fundings from these areas. Yes, thank you, Miss, for reminding. Yes, Fulbright is there, Commonwealth, Australian scholars. Yeah, so there are many others. So you need to be alert, but of course, you need to equip yourself to really be a competitive applicant as well. Then if you get to know about scholarships, also look at the particular, yes, NCAS, thank you. I think so there are several, thank you, Miss, for reminding. I remember some of our own academics, several of them have got some scholarships, financial assistance from NCAS. So you can always look at all those options and see where you can get some help. I as well as even Professor Pavithra, the same. We got the scholarships from the particular universities that we were reading for the degree. So it was from the particular university. So whatever the case may be, you need to explore the scholarships and also see their coverage and conditions. Now, you have to see what aspects they cover and what they don't, and what are the conditions, and based on the coverage and conditions, maybe some of the things are not covered. So still you may have to bear a particular cost. So that would be fine to an extent, but rather than what I was saying not to is, don't get into the difficulty of trying to go there and say, no, I can somehow find the money, and that can be very much a difficulty. But if it's maybe partially or large percentage covered, and some few things that you need to deal with on your own, that may be a possibility. So but still for all, then you need to work around the fact, how are you going to find the balance money, how are you going to cover the balance cost. So you need to see, in some countries there may be restrictions on working as students. You have to see whether based on the country that you're going, are there any restrictions? If so, what are they? That's one thing. So because by working, you might be able to cover part of the cost. Another thing is, you're working at least part-time means you're to an extent compromising on the time that you will be able to spend on your PhD. So see how are you going to really balance the time in terms of time devoted to the PhD as well as managing work. again, it depends on if you're going on your own versus going with the family. In my case, I can share my personal experience. I went with my family. My husband was full-time working. Therefore, I was able to send my kid to daycare because daycare was very expensive. Presumably, that may be the case now also in Australia. Because I wouldn't have been able to complete my PhD on time in this manner if I was not in a position to send my kid to daycare. So once the small one was at daycare and the big one was in school, I used to really work on my research until they are back. So I had some interrupted time. But the cost, how I was able to manage was because my husband was working. Because scholarship alone was not enough. Scholarship was enough to have the kind of cover my cost, but especially daycare, it was not a possibility. So you need to weigh the options. How am I going to manage? If you have someone, if your spouse is going to be home, maybe if you have kids, maybe they can look after. Or are you going alone? In that case, individual's cost very much through a scholarship you'll be able to cover. So these are little things you need to think about in terms of how you are going to cover the costs, and very importantly, be alert about the different scholarship options. Then which universities to apply, which university programs to apply. I think it's very important to be aware that the university or the institute from which you earn your qualification matters. After all, you have to live with that qualification and live up to that qualification, as I always say. So don't think, okay, the first university that comes my way, I'm going to accept. No, it's again, I'm going back to my same point. It's not a race. Finally, you're going to have that qualification after your name for the rest of your life. So it should be something that you can truly be happy about. So rather than rushing, take time now itself. Sometimes you may be doing your master's now. That's okay for a change. When you get some free time, just browse through the universities, websites, look at the ranking, familiarize yourself, do all that groundwork, and make sure that you really go to a university which has a high repute internationally, because that really can make a difference, and that will make a difference. Then most importantly, in a PhD, it's the supervisor. Supervisor plays an extremely important role. So you have to really be very careful in the supervisor selection. Where possible, you need to actually explore the availability of various supervisors in different universities. That's what I mentioned. One thing is you can write to them personally and see with your background, your qualifications, and also especially your publications. So if you have referred to their work in your prior publications, that can really work positively as well, because they see that you are, that is the particular discussion, or that's the line of research that you're into, because there has to be a match with the supervisor's interest, research interest, expertise, and your study. Therefore, try to spend time to make sure that you are really selecting a suitable supervisor. Look at their qualifications, look at their expertise, and of course, the publications. As I earlier said also, I'm actually blessed to have had an excellent supervisor for my PhD. And I mean, so many years down the line, still I have contact, and there are things that we do together. Like I review some papers. He's an editor of a particular journal. I still review articles for that journal, etc. So it can be a long lasting relationship, but you need to really build that relationship very well, carefully. So don't rush. I know in some programs, maybe you may not have the option to select a supervisor. you may be given a research supervisor based on the particular your areas of expertise, areas of research and the particular methodology, etc. But still, for all, where possible, see the options and see whether you could really write to them. And also, if you know some people, because it's a small world, and then we have our contacts, you have so many colleagues who are doing studies here and abroad. So maybe have a chat with them and just ask them about their supervisors and others whom they know. That will also help you to, make some decisions. Then again, you have to take a lot of time to go through brochures, handbooks, look at the website, obtain as much information as possible about the various programs before you make a decision. Look at the coursework requirements, assessments, in some universities. For instance, we did have some coursework before starting the PhD. Before the research per se, but it was not assessed, but we were required to follow those courses, do presentations, etc. But the PhD, the qualification was totally based on the evaluation of the PhD thesis. So that's the program that I was in. But certain others, even Pavithra Miss, I'm sure she also had some coursework components. Not sure whether it was assessed or not. But I know in certain other universities,
It was assessed, it was
it was.
pass or fail, and it
Oh, okay.
appears in the transcript also.
Oh, okay, right. Now see, now in her case, it was assessed. So there can be various different options. Even in local programs, there is coursework that's been assessed. So you need to look at the timing, what needs to be done, and then thereafter you would be able to progress with the research. And also look at whether the program really meets your requirements and expectations. Is this what I want? So, and don't force yourself to a program if it really is not what you like, because you, after all, you need to do, this is your research, not your supervisors or not that university. So you need to really do something you like. So see, that again, coming back to the same point, don't just accept the first university that gives a positive response to you. Be on the lookout and really see, is this what I want to do? And this is what my expectations are, because then remember, you can enjoy the journey. It's a journey, it's not for a day or two, 3-4 years of hard work, but it will be an enjoyable journey if you really do something that you are really passionate about. Then about course fees, again, there will be differences based on the programs, institute, and then sometimes there can be certain payment options. So again, look at those options as well, and then that will help you to make the decision. Again, in terms of which universities, another thing is, you have so many people within our faculty, also through your contacts in other universities who have gone through this, or who are currently reading for PhDs in different universities. So have a chat with them, get their opinions, get their inputs, so collect information as much as possible, but don't get too confused by too much of advice as well, because finally, just because someone else did it does not mean to say I have to do the same thing. It's your study, so you have to decide based on your own circumstances what you think is the really best one for you. Again, as we keep saying, in terms of qualifications, research, everything, it's always quality, quality, and again quality. So don't just think, oh, it will be easier if I go here, so I'll get the qualification easier. Not really. Think about the quality, not the ease of obtaining the qualification, because you need to be happy about the qualification that you have earned. I'm sure, Pavithra Miss, we all have that satisfaction looking back, although it would have been hard at that time, but today we are happy about it. So,
Of course. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yes. So, talking through experience, we are telling, so always focus on quality. Don't just think, oh, it's not just doctor in front of your name. don't get caught to that and just try to get some qualification. Think about quality. Then also, so different universities, they can have various deadlines. Be alert, note down, and don't wait till the last moment. Prepare yourself and make sure that you are submitting the required documents on time. Don't, because you never know, last minute technology can play up, various things, you can fall sick, we never know. So try to do things a bit early. And also submit your application with all the required documents and don't submit unnecessary things because it can be annoying for them, As Pavithra Miss was telling little while ago, especially in the case of foreign universities, they may be getting so many applications. So your one will be just another. So we need to make sure that we make it easy for the person who's assessing and have a professional application that stands out and that attracts the attention. So you need to submit all the required documents, but not unnecessary things, and also in a very methodical way. Then few points to think about. Actually, preparing for this presentation was a rather easy exercise because recently Tharusha and I did a book on 200 do's and don'ts for management research students. So I have actually picked many points from that and thought that it will be useful to share at this forum as well. So taking some points from there, these are few things we want to highlight. Start early. So you can't suddenly decide today and tomorrow, apply for a university. It calls for a lot of hard work, and especially the reader or the assessor will understand whether you have really made that effort and devoted a lot of time and effort towards it. From the way you have written the proposal itself, that message will get conveyed. Pavithra Miss told little while ago to show the proposal to someone. So all that means taking time. So you have to develop to a level that would be convincing to a potential supervisor and a maybe high rank university that actually calls for a lot of work. Start early, little by little. So if you start now, it's not that you have to complete it next week. So little by little, you can work on it and develop a good proposal. Explore your options carefully before applying and selecting a program. So again, coming to the same point I was telling, not to simply accept the first one, but see what's positive about it, what's negative about it, how is it going to affect me in these angles. So give some thought and see what's the best given my circumstances, not because someone else selected it. For me, given my circumstances, this is the best. And don't ever think, okay, I applied for one university, they are going to accept me and they are going to give me a scholarship. As I earlier said, specialty scholarships can be very competitive. So you need to apply to several programs. But remember, you might need to, do some adjustments to your research proposal as well as certain other documents that these different universities ask for. So you have to follow the procedure. You can't just have one standard thing and submit everywhere. Identify their requirements and follow the procedure of different universities. Another very important point is, now you've done so well so far in terms of undergraduate, some are doing masters and again progressing very well. So all that counts. So your outstanding academic record, prior research, the fact that you have done a thesis for your undergraduate or masters, and moving beyond, if you have published your research at undergraduate or master's level in a ranked international journal, all that carries weight. And some key achievements, so those things can make a difference in terms of whether you will be awarded a scholarship or not. So main thing is try to develop your research profile in terms of publications. Don't try to, as I earlier said, multiple conferences or multiple journals, bits and pieces of your research in many local journals. Rather than that, again repeating, try for one good international rank journal. That itself will give you a lot of worth in terms of your ability to secure scholarship. And then in terms of after applying for the PhD, understand it takes while. Again, depending on the country, the time that you apply would be different, and then time that you apply for the scholarship also could differ. So you need to be conscious about these timelines, keep track of the timelines, and being mindful of all those timelines. If you still have not got a response, it's always good to politely inquire and ask what's happening. But the next day you apply, don't be a nuisance and send emails to the admission office. So you need to understand what are the timelines, and if there's a delay and if you haven't heard from them, only you need to really approach. Again, coming back to the same point I told earlier, don't be in a rush. You need to live with and live up to the qualification. So if you're in a rush, you will, just grab whatever comes your way first. And maybe you might think, oh, why did I do that at that time? I should have waited a bit and made a better decision. So again, this is for your entire career. As an academic, PhD is so important for you in your academic career. So make a very well thought out decision rather than rushing. So that's it from me. Wish you all the best. And both of us are happy to take any questions that you have.
Can I add a few
Yes,
points?
sure, miss. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So if you decide to, I mean, as Tharusha was saying, sometimes because of your family circumstances, you might end up doing your PhD here. But others, I would also like her strongly recommend that you go overseas for several reasons. One is the exposure to another university. They have various events happening, various talks, the resources, the library. I still remember one student who went on a semester to La Trobe under the La Trobe exchange program. She was so thrilled with the library, and she said, you can take and now here we have to go to the counter, and there it's all self-check-in and self-checkout, like so many things, like even small things. It's just that the exposure, the resources, the way things happen, all that, right? And also, if you are thinking of going abroad, I would strongly recommend you to go to an English-speaking country. Because due to that exposure, we ourselves improve. I know how much I improved in my writing from the exposure while I was in Australia, the supervisors, the comments they gave, the corrections they made. So over the years, it sort of gets so much internalized. So if you think of going abroad, go to an English-speaking country, so either UK, Australia, New Zealand, and so on, or even Singapore. And when you are applying now, when I was applying 20 years ago, I think I was one of the first from our faculty to go to Australia. So I didn't have anybody to ask about Australia, New Zealand. There were all those who had come back from Japan. That Japan was the destination those days for their PhD. So it was, I think I was the first, if not first, to go to Australia. And we didn't have any sessions like this where people shared information. It was all trial and error on my own. We had to look for places. And when I was looking for Australia, I read about this group of 8 universities. Those were the top 8 public universities in Australia. So I started looking at those group of 8 universities. They are like what Tharusha said, who went through their faculty management faculty, then HR, who are the people, what is their research, and then started contacting possible supervisors, excuse me, from those group of 8. And like she said, I applied for multiple universities, then I started hearing back from them. So I think I might have spent even 2 years applying for that, because sometimes, like she said, you get admission, but not the financial aid, right? So that's something. And the other thing, I would also like to emphasize what Tharusha said about selecting a good referee. You need to submit 2 referees. These days, suddenly I get emails saying, so and so, I don't even know who that person is. Saying, this person is applying, they have put you as a referee, and I'm like, who the hell is this person? All right. So please make sure you tell the supervisor, tell the person that you are putting them. I had a bad experience when I was applying for masters. I didn't know about this process, how much the weightage they give for a referee report. Sometimes they have to on their own directly upload. Those days there was no, when I was applying for my masters, it was no online, so it was sealed envelope. Some universities didn't insist on sealed envelope. They can give it as an open envelope for us to courier it, right? Only then when I got it as an open document, I realized, oh, no wonder up to now I was not getting any admission. Because this person just had written 2 sentences saying, I know Pavithra, I have taught her, right? Only later I found out, the art of writing referees, letters. So based on, because then I got one person, he was an Open University lecturer who had done his PhD in US. I saw the way he wrote referee letter for me. It was Dr. Upali Nanayakara. He taught marketing for us, right? So he knew what the Americans look for. And I was doing well in his class, participative, talking and arguing and challenging him and all that. So he mentioned all that. It was such a personalized letter about, where I sit in the class, how I challenge him. I used to come in a moped. So, he mentioned that I was such a different person. All that matters, right? So I learned lesson from how he wrote referee report for me. And then I try to apply similar thing in it. So sometimes when people ask, I say, sorry, I can't. People, of course, think I'm, being big-headed and refusing thing, but it's for your good. Because if I do, like Tharusha said, if I haven't supervised you, if I haven't noticed you in class when I teach, I can't personalize and say, this is how, you ask questions in teamwork, you do like this, you do this. If I can't explain, because that's what the universities are specifically asking for, your leadership quality, your writing skills, your participation, whether you can independently work, whether you can, you're self-motivated. So we need to know examples of you to write that in the referee. So be very careful in choosing who your referees are. And then, yeah, maybe I'll stop now, and maybe other points to your questions I might be able to see.
Yes, Miss, can't agree more with those points. Thank you. Yeah. Any questions, please?
We have till 11 o'clock higher degrees
Yes.
to answer
Yes.
your question.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can take, yeah, there's time. We can answer any questions. I think it's a good time for you to now think about it, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
Pasan.
Yes,
Yes, Pasan.
Yes, Pasan.
Yeah, madam. So, madam, thanks for everything that you have explained to us. It was very clear and short. And, madam, this is something about the European PhDs. Most of the European PhDs are, seems like masters leading to PhD. So, MPhil leading to PhDs, which will take around 5 years or 6 years. So, are there any restriction for South Asians or Sri Lankans to apply for direct PhDs if we have done masters here, or should we start from the MPhil leading to PhD or something like that? Will it be worth for us, madam?
Tharusha, do you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also not very familiar with the European setup, but I presume, Pasan, you might need to look at the individual universities. They may have several programs. So there may be some programs that are MPhil leading to PhD. You can also be on the lookout whether there are direct PhDs, especially if you have done masters. And as I said, maybe try to get publications. So that may carry weight. But if the university only offers MPhil leading to PhD, well, we may not have I don't know whether it's anything to do with our countries or whatever. If it's basically the universities, the particular programs that they offer, no?
Because
Yeah,
the
madam.
few who have done PhD in UK, I have a feeling those were direct PhDs. Somebody I know, I supervised for her master's from Kelaniya. She went for a PhD. I think that in UK that was a direct PhD, and even Tilakshmi's, I think it was a direct PhD program. Bradford. Yes, Pasan.
Yes.
Uh-huh. So, madam, if it is a master's leading to PhD, is it worth to do? That mean we will be taking some courseworks as well from European context or that UK context or whatever the place. So, rather than limiting our knowledge to the local masters, is it good to go from master's leading to PhD or direct PhD? What is the best, madam?
I mean, for me, the option, I mean, I would prefer if you all have done a master's and a research at master's level, aiming for PhD directly. My other concern is leave. How much leave? You all have only 3-year paid
Yeah.
leave, and then it will be all unpaid leave. The more the leave, whether it's paid or unpaid, the bond value and all those. So I'm looking at it from that aspect as well.
Totally agree, Miss. And also, you have anyway, since you're doing a PhD or have done it, sorry, not PhD, masters, and if it's also with coursework, you have actually got a good foundation, no? So I suppose this, I totally agree with Pavithra, Miss, in terms of the time that you might have to, additional time you have to spend, because obviously it will be another, at least one year more.
Yeah, madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you. I have done not exactly a coursework masters, but MPhil. It was a
Oh,
2-year completely a research work. So,
okay.
okay, I'll
That's
check.
great. So if you have, then Pasan, if you have done a MPhil, then
Mm-hmm.
MPhil carries higher weightage when you're doing for a PhD, going for
Mm.
PhD. That's something I told you because I also did a
Yeah.
MPhil. Although it was a difficult experience, I said it really helped me when I was in the PhD. Even at the PhD application process, I was told that had a positivity because it's actually
Mm.
higher than a other master, because it's masters by philosophy. So in such a situation, I presume you can go for a direct PhD. What do you think, Miss?
Uh-huh.
Because he has done a MPhil also. Why should you
Yeah,
spend
I would
another
also
year?
encourage. I would
Hmm.
also
Okay.
encourage to go for a direct. Look for universities, good universities that have a direct program.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Thank you. Thanks for your insights, madam.
So if you have, yes,
Supervisor fit is something that is very important. Because I've heard horror stories. People
same.
have not completed, then come back because of the supervisor. I mean, even though you apply, you might talk to them and you might want them. In terms of personality, the supervision style and all that, you really get to know only once you go there.
Yes, yes.
And hopefully you will have, most of the universities now don't rely on one person. They have sometimes a panel, 2 people. So
Yeah.
there's
And
something
also
important.
linked to, and linked to Pavithra Mrs. point, in the kind of worst case scenario, if you really have difficulties, I think you should not really, just try to just live with it. You have to take it up at different levels.
They
First,
have those, no?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, you need to do that. You have to talk to the maybe program coordinator, etc., and take it. And of course, there are instances we have intervened in certain programs that we are part of here. If it's
Change
yes, we change. So it's not a problem that we have to find a solution. You don't have to be miserable if you really
suffering.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yes, if it's not working, you need to find a way how you can really deal with that.
But whether you change program, change supervisor, sometimes even change university, make sure you keep the university informed. Because you're on leave, you're on bond and all that, you need to always keep the university informed of any changes that happens.
Yes. And in your case, adding to that point, you're supposed to give, send the progress reports on time. Make sure you do that because that's very important. Well in advance, make sure you send the progress reports because as academics on study leave, that's a pretty important condition that we need to fulfill.
Whether
Asheni.
local or foreign, yeah.
Yes.
Madam, just a small question. So when we are applying for scholarships, maybe we'll say it's local or either foreign. So what are the elements that they consider in us? Is it only the academic excellence, or should we show forth the publications as well, like to gain a scholarship, we'll say in local setup?
If it is local, it's basically in cash those days. I don't know with all this financial thing, whether they still have it. I used to be in the interview panel for INCAS UGC because they had a MOU with QUT. There was a panel from there and here that used to interview all these applicants. So there they were looking at the IELTS score, whether you have started the process, whether you have contacted the supervisor, things like that. And they would say, okay, if you get admission, you will get this. And then I think INCAS was giving the living expense and QUT would give the tuition waiver or something like that. So that was the arrangement. But generally, when you're applying for foreign universities, it's based on merit. It's based on merit. So in terms of merit, again, the scores, your previous masters, how well you had done, how strongly your department, now let's say you're applying for a particular X university and in a particular department, because initially for scholarships, which are university-wide, like what Tharusha and I got, those were university-wide scholarships, right? So initially the scholarship advertisements applications based on who they have selected, then at the department level, they will evaluate and say, okay, these are the strong people for whom we want. So give them scholarship and get them to our program. Then all the departments in the faculty will nominate at the faculty level. And then they will rank order based on merit. So there it depends in the department you are applying for, how strongly they will. So if you are good potential in terms of research you have done and your topic is of interest, whatever, so how much they push for you, then your name gets high in the faculty level. Then among all the faculties, because at university level, they might be only having about 50 or so scholarships. So all the faculty PhD students who have been got admission and are vying for the scholarship, competition is for that 50 or 100 scholarships.
Yeah. And just to add another point, they are actually, if you have, that's why I was stressing also, good publications really help. Because that's something I was later told also. If you have, again, quality publications in ranked journals, that also add to this, add value to your application, and also the class that you have got for your undergraduate or masters, if you've got a medal or, all that, finally make an impact. But primarily, as Miss said, of course, the strong proposal.
So there are, some universities like UNSW and all that say that you need to have at least 2 publications in ABDC, AOB, like that, some specify what is required to get a PhD admission in terms of publication.
So again, I will link to that. As Miss said, it's better that you look at the websites and see. So if you're interested in a particular university and if they have listed down the requirements, okay, because then you can really work towards it if you start now. Otherwise, getting a publication is a time-consuming thing. You need to really think about it now and really do, browse the websites, etc. early.
Okay, thank you very much.
The advantage of going to a good university, higher ranked university, is also their resources in terms of they have funding for scholarships. The supervisors have research grants from which they can give you scholarship. Then there are libraries and, you know, facilities like individual rooms rather than shared rooms, and, you know, things like that will be much better than when you go to a lower rank. Now, Deakin apparently these days are giving good scholarships. They are even covering health insurance. Now, for me, my Melbourne insurance didn't cover health. I had to pay for health insurance, and now the health insurance costs have gone up so much. They expect you to pay the 3 years insurance when you are applying. I mean, when you are applying for your visa itself. For me, at that time, I was able to pay year after yearly, right? So some scholarships, I think they even give travel. They call it not
A research
something.
allowance, no, that we can go for conferences or something,
Yeah,
no?
that also there
Yes,
conference
yes,
for your PhD
yes.
research. No, even airfare they give
Okay.
to come to Australia. So depends on the scholarships. Some are
Yeah.
really giving a lot. Why are you all so quiet? You all haven't started thinking about it, or looks like a Herculean task to apply for PhD. What is happening?
I hope we didn't scare you. Just told the reality, but it's really an enjoyable thing. That's what. So maybe list down several topics to start with rather than sticking to one, and then with your readings and all that you can later decide. So, and also based
But
on
whatever,
yes,
but like Tharusha, yeah, whatever,
yes,
even if they might pick a couple of topics, but
yes,
all the topics, whatever you shortlist for your PhD research, it has to be of interest.
yes,
The word I use is close to your heart.
yes,
Because
yes.
like what Tharusha pointed
Yes.
out, you're going to spend 3 to 4 years working on your own on that research project. So it has to, you know, keep you going, to make you self-motivated to find the so-called truth about that research, to keep you motivated. So if the topic is not really of interest, you are trying to do it just for the sake of getting admission, or trying to, because it's the supervisor's topic or whatever, you will very soon lose interest. You won't put that effort, rigor that it requires. Now, I chose work-family conflict, which I'm still continuing to do research in that area in different ways, right? So it's your sort of portfolio. It becomes your core research
Yes.
area as well.
Yes, and if you do a good study, I think that lays a real strong foundation for rest of the work you do. No, you can really build upon that. It's not that you're doing the same thing like what we said, but you get such a strong foundation and your confidence, all that improves, and you can really be happy about yourself. So you need to think of all that when you select what you do and where you do.
Miss, I have a small question.
Yes. No need to say small, big or small. Any question is a question. No problem.
Okay.
Yes, Metma.
So yes. So when we are developing our research proposal, when we pick an area or a topic, I was just wondering, like, is it okay to focus on empirical gap, which is in our context, like in Sri Lankan context, or should now when we are applying to different countries for PhD, should we, consider about that country's situation and their context as well? And when we are thinking about the data collection, is it okay only to have Sri Lankan data collection in our proposal, or should we mention like data collection in those countries as well? How would you suggest, Miss? What do you recommend?
Now, I can't remember in my original, my 2-page proposal, I think I did say cross-cultural, cross-country. And even in my proposal that got confirmed, I said cross-country, and I actually attempted Australian data collection, and the response rate was so poor, I ended up doing only data collection from Sri Lanka. But it's not a must, even if it's Sri Lanka, as long as they don't really care where the site is. It's the topic and the gap that you identify. As long as Tharusha pointed out, if the knowledge gap is strong, your justification is there, it doesn't matter whether it's primary, secondary, whether you do include New Zealand or Sri Lanka. It's just that sometimes they are of concern. Now I'm supervising a Sri Lankan PhD student in Deakin University. So during the proposal development and all that, and even when it came to ethics clearance at that time, Aragale was going on. So they were concerned, although he's Sri Lankan, whether he can come to Colombo to do data collection. So those were issues. And then he was like saying, no, I'm Sri Lankan. It's not a problem for me to go to Sri Lanka to come. But even I remember even when I had to come to Sri Lanka, they treated me as an Australian. So I had to get all the vaccinations, show all that to say I'll be safe and all these, and then come to Sri Lanka. Because for them, from their point of view, they are responsible, right? But in terms of proposal, I would say it doesn't matter. Tharusha, what do you think?
Yes, I also share the same ideas because in my case also, my data was all from Sri Lanka. And finally, I was able to publish my research in several very good journals as well. So it's really how you showcase your study in terms of I had a the issue was more global, and you're using a Sri Lankan example to illustrate it. So Sri Lanka is only example, and as long as you show in-depth data, in my case, since it was a qualitative study, I was able to justify. So same goes true with the other methodology. So we are using Sri Lanka as the context. So that issue can be of relevance anywhere, everywhere. Therefore, it will not be an issue. Like Pavithra means, my supervisor also at one point said, we'll see whether we can think about Australian data. But again, it was very difficult. But back here, we have our contacts. We approach so many people when we have to get data. So it was much easier for me to do a very large number of interviews within a limited time. So don't worry too much. Develop a strong proposal. Data lot of us who have done studies overseas also have used Sri Lankan data. It's really a matter of how you put forward the argument and how you bring the local context as an illustration of the issue. And this ethics issue also, I also had the same thing, because by the time I collected data also, I think there were some issues in Sri Lanka war, and also they were saying, can you go, how to go, all that. And I also had to fill all these forms and say, well, I am a Sri Lankan, I'm very comfortable to go. Yeah. So those things are there, but don't worry about it. Having Sri Lankan data won't be an issue.
Thank you very much, Tharusha, and thank you very much, Victor.
Madam, I have a couple of questions. One question is, now my MPhil research area was a combination of lab economics and gender economics. So it's almost economics, so I can apply for economics related PhDs. And my department is also business economics, since I have to go for economics stream. So in case if I apply for PhD in lab or PhD in gender, which is offered by a different department, not an economics related department, will it be a problem for my academic career? That is first question. And the second question is regarding these qualitative studies. I think Madam Tharusha said that she did her study in qualitative work. So some of the people are saying that it will take some longer period of time to complete it, even though it is a 4-year PhD, it will take around 7 years to complete or something like that. So is it true, or what is best? If I'm interested in doing a purely qualitative work, is it good to go with that interest, or should I go with a mixed research methodology to complete it on time? Thank you, madam.
Yeah. can I answer the second question? Yes. Yes. So definitely any research, doing a quality research can take time, but no, if you are organized and if you systematically work from the beginning, you can certainly complete a qualitative study on time. I was able to complete within a very much a reasonable time, so don't think it as a barrier. And regarding mixed method, I don't think you should embark on mix don't think that it's while there are reasons to take that on board, it's not suitable in all circumstances. Sometimes you may be able to do a pure quantitative or pure qualitative. In fact, sometimes mixed method can take long also, because depending on the which type of mixed method you do, you might have to even depending on the country, get ethics approval twice. If you are having first quantitative part, qualitative or qualitative quantitative, then so it depends on the mixed method design. You might have to even take a longer time. So something I always tell, while mixed method certainly has merits, it may not be suitable all the time. And qualitative, not necessarily. Of course, there's a lot of data. That's what people say. There's a lot of data. It's all about writing. So there'll be a lot of rewriting, of course, in any PhD. But as long as you develop the discipline and you associate with good articles, understand how they write, regularly work on it, there will be no barrier for timely completion. Several of us have been able to do that on time. So, and whether to select qualitative, quantitative or mix would really depend on your research questions. There is no one best methodology. Something we always tell in research methodology classes, I think. So be open to it. So think about, try to write down your research questions, see what you are interested in, then see to explore those, which is the best way to go. Sometimes it can be quantitative or qualitative or mixed, and accordingly select. Don't force the methodology on your research. So I'm sure either methodology you can complete on time.
And nowadays, like in Australia, some universities like Deakin insist that you should finish it in 3 years. Whether it's qualitative, quantitative, that's how the PhD, the time duration and the scholarship they give, and they are being very strict that you should finish it in 3 years. With regard to your other question, Pasan, yes, I have seen recently some issues when it comes to promotion and when it comes to promotion and especially promotion to professor level, because you say professor of something or professor in something, then they look at your past qualification, your research area to see whether you are actually, you have done your PhD and research in that area to be known as professor in that. So gender is not an issue, but make sure if you are from economics, business economics department, that because now some universities like in Melbourne, it was Faculty of Business and Economics. So the faculty name covers economics, right? Sometimes it might be management school is different from the Faculty of Arts where the economics is. So I don't know which department you will apply to. But your research title, who your supervisors in, and your program has to have some link to economics. Otherwise, in future, I don't want you to face any problem when it comes to promotion, saying, you know, you're economics person, but you specialized in whatever, tourism, or you specialized in something. So make sure even your research topic, although it's about gender, now in gender, economics do have aspects of gender. No, there's gender budgeting. They look at various things about, you know, from a development perspective about look at gender as well. So make sure that is there, not just a pure gender from a gender department.
Yeah, just add to that also. Now there's a lot of interdisciplinary research also happening now. So it's a particular perspective. You need to bring the management flavor. Maybe in terms of the reading, if there are co-supervisors, one can be from management or economics and the other from that. So some way there should be a way that you can showcase that this does have the economics and management flavor and not totally the other side. So it's a matter of bringing in that balance.
Yeah, understood, madam. Thank you very much.
We still have about 5 minutes.
Yes.
I would like to emphasize a point that Tharusha mentioned about challenges, novel experience, and things like that. Although you might have a cohort when you go, like when you're applying, whether it's Sri Lankan PhD or foreign PhD, they take a group of people for that faculty or department. So you will have a cohort. So when you're doing coursework, they will be there, you can discuss and all that. But your research, it's a lonely research. You need to do, of course, supervisors are there. Sometimes the supervisors might not be experts in that area, but experts in the methodology. So it's a lonely journey. You need a lot of support from your family, even if you are single, parents, whatever. Make friends there, but don't get too involved with all the social commitments of the Sri Lankan community where you go, then you will end up only attending birthday parties and funerals and whatever. So, but make use of them when you feel homesick, you want a nice Sri Lankan food or whatever. But try to have a good support system, but at the same time, your focus should be your PhD and be ready. You have ups and downs, high moments when you have a eureka moment, you did something, and crying moments. I had a big crying moment when my supervisor decided to leave to US. Right, I was like, oh dear, she was my best supervisor. She's going to leave me and go to from Australia to US. What am I to do? Then, of course, she remained my supervisor, but she wasn't there in person, right? So you can have these ups and downs, but so be ready for anything, right? Don't just leave everything for the first hurdle, challenge you see and run away.
So true. It's a roller coaster ride. And when you have your ups and downs, also share with others. Sometimes we had this small group the other students who were doing the PhD with me. And then when we share our issues, we realize that you realize you're not alone. It's something that others also go through. And also have faith in yourself. You've come so far, you've done well so far, so you can get through this also. It's not something impossible so many people have done. It's really about keeping the motivation and being at it. I think self-discipline plays a big role. Yes, more
When
than
I
a
was
thought
in
course.
Melbourne, when I was in Melbourne, I started this thing called the monthly ethnic dinner series. So every month, one of the PhD students, we will organize something like one time in a Lebanese restaurant, one time in a Japanese restaurant, just for all of us to get together, can talk about PhD, can talk about movies, whatever, just a sort of relaxing and getting to know each other, that networking, everything is multiple things, but also to experience different food. That's also part of that experience, right? Exposure that you get.
Sure. Any other questions?
If not, yeah, it's almost time, no?
Yes. So we can wind up, no? Because there is another meeting also at 11. Yes.
Is that okay, Pasan, if we finish now? If no, there are no questions?
Yes, madam. So, as the ending remarks, I would like to invite Asheni De Silva to deliver the vote of thank and thank these two resource persons. Asheni, miss, it's time for you.
Yeah, thanks, Fasan. So, on behalf of all the colleagues present here today, I would like to thank Professor Pavithra Kailasapathy and Professor Tharusha Gooneratne for delivering us a very insightful and resourceful session, because we all are in the verge of searching and finding knowledge, because it's really a gap that we don't know. Thank you, madam, both of you, for delivering an insightful session, since it was very useful for all of us. Thank you once again.
You're welcome and all the best.
Yes.
If there is anything, you all can email us, ask us, if you bump into us anywhere, at least, yeah. feel
Yeah.
free to contact.
Yes. So wish
Thank you, madam.
yeah, wish you all the best and hope you were able to pick some takeaways from our presentation. And thank you for organizing.
Yeah, thank you, madam. And one more announcement for our resource persons. We had token of appreciations to be delivered. So I will be sharing those things once university commencement, and there will be a valuable pin plus letter of appreciation as well. So thank you for everything, madam.
No problem. Thank
Well,
you.
thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.